Welcome to the Quality of Mind Transforming Business podcast, where we explore the game-changing understanding that can unlock new levels of performance and well-being in the workplace. If you want to be part of the new breed of leaders in business, if you're fed up with the conventional echo chamber, and if you want to be part of a revolution in human potential, then join us to discover the powerful resource that lives before our psychology.
Hello and welcome to the Quality of Mind Transforming Business podcast series. So today, another episode, and I'm joined by a bit of a regular to the show and a colleague and associate, Kate Adey. And we think we've got quite an interesting topic to talk about for the next half an hour. So Kate, first of all, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Piers. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's welcome. I'm really looking forward to this. So Kate and I were chatting the other day about what could we do a podcast episode on. And something that came out of my mouth was the idea that sometimes in life we can become what I described as comfortably numb. And Kate said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. That'd be a great thing to do a podcast on." So that's what we're going to do. So Kate, where should we start on this? What would you like to do?
Well, how about, and it's fascinating. I think it's great. I've enjoyed talking about it so far, behind the scenes. But how about, what if you were to kind of give the listeners an idea of what does that mean to you? And have you got some kind of real life examples of what does being comfortably numb?
Yeah.
I mean, let's bring it to life a bit.
Okay. So this is something I think I only spotted in retrospect. So in hindsight. So if I think of myself 10, 15 years ago, I would say I was kind of happy in life. I was, I had a nice little business. I was achieving. There was nothing particularly wrong. I mean, there's a few ups and downs and what was going on, but generally all very nice. And, I wouldn't say that I was disillusioned or depressed or struggling or had a high stress or anything like that. So all very nice. But now looking back, I can see that at some level I was sort of slightly contracted. I didn't have some of the really day-to-day ordinary juice, joy, little moments of awesomeness in life. I would have some peak moment experiences as I did stuff, and that was great. But the day-to-day, just the ordinariness of life, didn't feel that special. It felt okay, it didn't feel bad. Now what I experience is every moment is potentially packed full of juice and joy, and the extraordinary in the ordinary. So it could be going for a walk on a walk I've done 1,000 times, and just something catches your eye and just that feeling of oneness, or having a cup of tea and just feeling totally just at ease and peace. And genuinely, I think I would find more beauty and awesomeness on the outside and more peace and aliveness and flow on the inside. Not because I'm doing anything spectacular now, probably less so than I was, but it feels like I'm more open to just see the juice in every moment of what we are, rather than it trying to come from an outside or something like, or a peak internal moment. Now, does that make any sense to you, Kate, as you're listening to that?
Yeah, it does. It does on a number of levels. And I think for me, when you were talking about, that kind of life was okay. I'm going to use the words kind of, you were chugging along, you had, on a graph, peaks, and then maybe come down, but not really ever low. You were just, stuff was happening. And I can certainly resonate with that. That definitely was, I think, how I was as well. If I, in looking back, and particularly in corporate life as well, just getting on with stuff, but not really engaging in any, I suppose, going deeper into any other perspective. It was just, chugging along. suppose a question that pops into mind is, so what, for you to notice, or for someone to notice that is how they are there any indicators? And maybe we can come to this later on.
Yeah. I mean, it's because I started off saying you don't really know until afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
It's like, you know, you eat a nice strawberry and you go, that's a nice strawberry. And then a month later, you have a really ripe, luscious strawberry. You're like, oh, that's what strawberry should taste like. Right. But the first strawberry was kind of okay until you had the other strawberry and you're like, oh, that's what a really natural, fresh strawberry tastes like. So I think of how, you know, indicates people to look in their life. And bear in mind, the mind is going to trick you in this. Is in your everydayness, how much lightness, ease, joy, aliveness is there, even when you're not doing something peak experience-y, right? So it might, as you said, Kate, it might be just walking into your office and just there's a little bit of moment of joy when you see one of your colleagues and you have a lovely little chat, or someone, or the new idea that pops up, and there's just like an openness and a lovely, like, oh, isn't that amazing? A bit like 3, 4, 5-year-olds who can find joy, oneness, and awesomeness in anything. A blade of grass, a cloud, and they're really they kind of have there's a glint in their eye, right? So I think what happens is that gently we contract down out of that without really noticing it. And we get more, another sort of word, we get more in our heads. Now, we might do things to try and get out of our head, like we might do our singing or our sport. But apart from when we're doing those things, we don't really feel it. So other little indicators might be that we really like look forward to holidays and weekends, because that's when we give ourselves permission to decontract a bit, or particular activities. Or I think we might not appreciate things as much as we do. So we might just not really we might not get touched by things. So, you know, sometimes when we're in a really lovely aperture and we're not numb, we can just get really touched by something. It just something that there's a warmth inside us, and it could be a simple thing. It could be just looking at something in nature, or watching a child play, and it's just like, oh, that's amazing. So there's more amazingness in the ordinary.
So I think those indicators, if we kind of go back to those, that's interesting in a way, because we miss those. So if we can take the opportunity now to kind of go, yeah, am I going into the office with those moments of joy? How am I walking? If I'm walking a dog every day, am I just in my head and thinking about the next thing? And am I thinking about maybe the next thing, like you mentioned, holiday? Am I, you know, the planning the holiday to the point of, oh, I'll feel fine once I actually have my holiday. So I'm not now, I'm actually looking ahead and thinking that is going to give me, if you like, everything that I need.
Yeah. So I suppose another way of saying it, but this is always a thing I think it needs unpacking, is being more present to the moment rather than looking excitedly to the next thing. And it's fine to look forward to stuff, but we don't want to then look forward to stuff to compensate for the sort of grind or drudgery of what we think the everyday is, right? So, you know, if every day feels a bit chuggy or a bit grindy or a bit, oh, here I go again, right? A Monday morning, I get out of bed and I go to work, and and I'm glad when I get to 5 o'clock. That's a bit sort of comfortably numb. And it doesn't have to be I hate my work. It's just, and it could even be, oh, today was okay. It's a bit fine. Everything's a bit fine, a bit vanilla. And we feel like we've lost our mojo or our spark.
And you might, I mean, I've definitely asked people, so how are you doing? How's it going? And we say, oh, I'm fine, or I'm okay. And it's almost like a vanilla, like a cover. And you can, even if you notice it yourself, it feels that as well. So it's almost as though the body is numb to any possible feeling of life, because it's just perceived in that way. So it's not to say that this can't carry on that way. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, whoa, there's actually so much more.
Yes, exactly. Because we tend to wait till we get depressed or disillusioned or burnout or something goes wrong before we start looking at the mind or changes. We kind of wait till you know, oh, I'm fine at the moment. Yeah, there's nothing I need to do with what I'm inquiring about, because it's all okay. But I think it's a really nice way you said it, that life feels a bit vanilla and a bit bland, and we just go, well, that's what life feels like. Now, once we've had some understanding in the direction, quality of mind, non-duality, whatever, awakening, we start to say, oh, no, life doesn't feel like that.
I love, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
You know, that's what our aperture is doing to life.
Yes, I love
right?
that when you just said that's what life just feels like. It's like, oh, totally. We label what life is, and that becomes the mind, the construction of what we then live.
Yes.
So limiting.
Exactly.
So,
but we think that's life, not
and
that's
it's okay. It's okay.
Nothing wrong with it. Of course there isn't.
It.
But it's just a bit of a, once you've seen the other side, you're like, oh, it's a bit of a shame that now we don't want to live in regret and anything, but I was like, oh, okay, so I had probably 15, 20 years where I was more contracted than I need to be. I was more comfortably numb than I needed to be. It doesn't matter. It's still okay. But I'm very, very grateful now that I don't see it like that.
Yeah.
And I suppose our invitation to people as listeners, as you're listening now, is to go, you too. Right.
Yeah. And do you think, Piers, I'm just wondering here, this is just popped into my mind of during that time when life was just sort of chugging along, and did you ever kind of look into the mirror deeply into your eyes? Because the only reason I say that is that my sense is it's almost like see a sadness of the soul, because it's not being truly lived. Life is not flowing in like that, in 100%. It's I don't know, 60% or 70%. So there's almost a lack of a sparkle in the eye. It's, there's a hint of one, but it's not totally coming through. And I can remember doing that myself. And actually, as I began to become a little bit more observant and sensing that there was something else. But I just want to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I don't think I would have articulated like that at the time, but I think I knew there was, intuitively, I knew there was something else, which is why I'm in the field I'm in, I guess, because I kind of, I found it fascinating. But at that time, we're talking 20 years ago now, I didn't know what else there was. Right. So I just thought it was down to me. Yeah. So if I just needed to try harder. I was totally mistaken as to what I was, which I think a lot of people are.
And have some more peak moments booked in.
Yeah, exactly. And try and avoid, this is another thing, protect from the things that might take you down. Right. So it's very much for me, have some peak moments and then try and protect yourself from anything that could throw you off. Right. Whereas now I don't think that hard about what happens. I just am what I am, and nature lives me. So, and when you're not the thing that you look at in the mirror, that's just an appearance, right? And there is something else that you're part of. And this all sounds very trite, listeners, unless you're tuned into this, I'm sure. That wakes you up to more aliveness in every moment, and you are part of what everything is rather than being sort of numb to it. So I would definitely say that I feel more than I did. So I had a relatively stoic upbringing in that my mum was a farmer and my dad worked very hard, and I was sent to boarding school. So expressing how being felt wasn't a great idea. So therefore you contract down a bit to protect yourself from what you think could happen, because you don't know what you are. So that all means you become quite effective in life, but you're not smelling the roses.
It's a dumbed down version.
It's a dumbed down version. Fake perfume. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought my job was to get life right.
Yeah.
which requires two things: one, to know what right is, and B, to have control. Now, I now see that both of those two things are completely ridiculously impossible, because there's no such thing as right, and I'm not in control in the way that, you know, we might think with ultimate free will, and it's all down to me. So, but I think a lot of people are trying to go, well, life's okay because of this and this, you know, and whilst I've got my, we seek security in either physical things, you know, bank balances or pensions or jobs, or in our internal state, like, well, I've got positive thoughts, I'm okay.
Yeah. I've got all my ducks in the row, so
all my ducks in a row, and I can manage life. I'm tough, you know. When world gets tough, I get tougher, kind of thing. So we think we can pride ourselves, which I was for a long time. My positive thinking, I was like, I'm a real positive thinker, or whatever, you know. But both of those two things that I tethered my security to are, you know, by definition, inconsistent and not permanent, because they come and go with thought, feeling, sensation. Right. So I tethered my security to something that moves, which isn't a very good idea. It'd be like, you know, tying your boat to another boat. It's not a great idea. Right. So now I see, oh, what I truly am is not what comes and goes in the experience. And there's something else that we all are. And that seems to allow you to open up. But I think going back to this comfortable numb thing, I think it's quite hard. And we, Kate, in our job, have many conversations with people about our work, and they just sort of nod and smile, and they don't really know what we're on about, because they're just beautifully, comfortably numb.
And yeah, well, exactly. And it's kind of like, so what's the point of these conversations? Why are we keep, you know, bringing it into the fore and having you know, why do you have your podcast? Why do we continue to talk about this? Why do others continue to point towards this? It's because this is life. It's amazing once one is able to see, feel, just be lived, and the expansive nature of that is tremendous. And you actually want, I suppose, the joy to be lived by more people.
Yeah,
in their lives,
absolutely,
at work, at home, in play, in yeah. So it's kind of like, if I was to know what I know now, I you know, it would have changed the way that I would have lived those moments in what I was doing then. More expansively, more freely, less caught up in my head, less taking myself seriously. I think that's maybe another indicator, is how much are you taking things personally?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That's a great indicator.
Member of the family say something to you, and you react. You know, there's a pressure cooker going on, and you're just taking everything. It's almost like dart that is thrown, or every comment is you taking it personally. And if you are, wake up. That's the kind of like a signal on the dashboard, you know, just to
I think that's a great indicator. How personally do I take something? Yeah. And I think another one I'll chuck in as you were speaking, what occurred to me was, how conditional do we think our well-being is? So I'll be okay when, and that might be at a sort of bigger level. I'll be okay when I get promotion. I'll be okay when I pay the mortgage off. Or it might be, I'll be okay when it's 5 o'clock, right? So I'll be okay when something happens is adding a conditionality. So therefore we seek that happening, again, tethering our security to the wrong thing. So if I look back now, 15 years ago, I was sort of slightly chasing things that I thought I needed in life to be okay, whether that's a promotion, or buying a house, getting married, even some physical possessions, or when I get that car, or whatever it is. So we put a condition, you know, there's a sort of hamster wheel or rat race that turns up, that we think, well, once I'm on it, it's good, I need to stay on it. Now, what we're pointing to now is, if that's going on for you, then you're probably missing out on what's available in the simplicity of the ordinariness.
Yeah. And I'm just what's occurred as you're saying that is every moment that we have to ourselves is an opportunity to see this, just kind of from some of the examples going to go, oh yeah, that's me. I'm definitely taking myself more seriously. Oh, so what can I do about it?
What can we do about taking ourselves too seriously?
Well, no, so if I'm seeing, okay, I'm actually attaching too much of my well-being to going on holiday or to doing yoga classes. Okay, I've recognized that.
Yeah.
I've recognized that I'm in my head a lot when I'm going on, lovely, beautiful walks. I'm recognizing that. So, Piers, what can I do about that? Where do I go? What do I do? Can I fix that?
Yeah. So obviously the slightly more comprehensive answer is to dive more into quality of mind and non-dual understanding. But the podcast answer right now is to start to see, and this is so simple at one level, it just hides in plain sight, is that there'll be moments in your day or week, micro moments when everything does just feel okay, that there's sort of peace on the inside and harmony on the outside. Now, that might just be for a second when you wake up, right? Might just be for one moment that you feel like you've contrived. Now, in all the other moments, you might think, well, why didn't I have that moment more of the time? Well, because the mind in that moment was resisting or seeking or protecting something. It was active in being a perceived separate self, trying to achieve something in the world. Now, when our mind isn't doing that, actually what happens is we even lose the idea of there being a separate me, a Kate or a Piers, and we just are. We're just in the isness. There's just what we might call flow. And that's a lot less psychologically tiring, for one point. And two, whatever turns up just turns up through us, and it tends to have a lovely feeling to it. So the thing to start to spot is, oh, I'm already able. I already have the capacity to feel more alive with life and more at ease and flow. It's just the way I'm running the mind at the moment takes me out of that. So there's nothing I need to add in at all. Actually, it's just spotting that it's there, and spotting what takes me out of there is the mind starting to self-identify with what's going on and me thinking there's a job to do.
Yeah, exactly. And and that might sound simple, and it is simple, but it might not feel easy to start with, because it's very quick that the mind, so that almost that, oh, I've noticed that I am seeking things, material things, to make myself feel happy. Now, oh, I've noticed that. Very quickly the mind will go, it'll go into the next, actually the next thing. So the trick, if you like, is, because there is absolutely, I agree, there is no how to, there's no addition to additional stuff to go and do at all. It's seeing that is actually not, it's what you don't need to do.
Yes.
It is already flowing through you. It takes that moment of noticing to almost deep sense that is there.
Yeah, and it is a deep sensing that's there, but we have to wake up that deep sensing in a way, because I think the comfortably numbness means our
conditioning, almost
our calibration of that deep sensing has switched off.
Yeah.
So the reason why most people think, well, there's nothing to see. What are they on about? What are they banging on about the last 20 minutes? I don't get it. Well, the comfortably numbness means your deep appreciation of that has kind of numbed, and you have to wake it back up. It's a bit like I often use the metaphor, and I don't know whether it always works, of a smart thermostat. It has to be calibrated to know when to kick in, right? And to start with, it won't be very calibrated. It won't do it, it will be 3 or 4 degrees before it manages to kick back in. But once we wake up to it, the system automatically spots when we're overthinking or seeking and sorts it out for us. But to start with, we have to kind of wake it back up, right? Because all our thinking has kind of numbed it, and it looks like normal. And I tell you what, one way you can see this, one external manifestation of this, you sit on a train or a bus or in a waiting room and just watch people, how bad they are at just being totally still and peaceful without a phone or a this or a that. Now, this is just an external manifestation, right? Which they pick up the phone and start to seek something, right? But everyone, you know, people will sit down for a bit, then they'll just grab their phone again. So the mind's always wanting activity. Now, that's let alone what's going on for those people that aren't using their phone. They're probably doing that internally with a thought. They're probably attaching themselves to a thought, and they're overthinking. You know, how often do you just sit there, not trying to meditate, because that's again an activity, but just being whatever's turning up comes through the system, but nothing sticks. It just flow, and there's no like seeking or something like that. So I think we're so taken away from this sensing, this deep sensing you're talking about, that it's hard for people to go, what is that then?
Yeah. And it however, I would say that comes, if you like, reappears, because it's always been there. Once the, just being happens more often, if that's brought into the life, because then it's almost like the scales tip the other way, not necessarily scales, but we've been so conditioned, and the numbness has been for so long, and everything's been okay, fine, we've not dipped into, we're just flipping it around to see what's on the other side.
Exactly. So I think that's very important, that everyone has this capacity. It's just covered up. And once you start to get a nose for it, once you wake the system up, once we start to calibrate the thermostat again, it becomes like, oh yes, and you start to respect it, you prioritize it, and you start to see it. But it's when it's hiding,
and you don't know it's there.
No, I mean, I guess we sort of intuitively might. I mean, the reason someone might be bothering to listen to this podcast in the first place might be because they kind of slightly know already. Do you think?
Well, they might be listening anyway, just because they listen to other ones of yours, or there might be that intuitive sense, or maybe they've heard from someone else that actually, come on, there is something else, and therefore they've been kind of almost, I suppose, pushed along to kind of have another look. Essentially.
Something keeps us. Well, I think there is I think for a lot of people, the system's often trying to point us back this way, but we're just very good at drowning it out.
I think it's back to that what the conditioning, or the what's been layered on over years and years and years to be the norm. That's all we see and understand in that moment. So we behave from that, that understanding. And that, what we're saying is actually there's more that is there that hasn't been seen. It's just been unnoticed.
And if you think about it, it's what culture and society rewards. So culture and society rewards big peak moments or peak experiences. How often do you get merit badged and rewarded for having just the most simple, peaceful little moments of awe day? That's not what gets like, yay, well done you. It's like you achieve something, you run up Mount Everest backwards, and hop, those. It seems to me that society is slightly orientated towards big achievements, and that then makes us a bit seeky, and we don't really value. If you say to someone, what do you do on the weekend? Oh, nothing really. Just had a beautifully simple, awesome time with the dog or my kids. Lockdown's a great example of this. I mean, the beauty in lockdown was amazing, but most of us would go, now we can get back to life. And that was the thing, right? So now we can get back to life. No. Life was beautifully happening in lockdown. It wasn't quite as busy and connected, maybe,
Yeah.
But people were waiting for lockdown to end to get back to life.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I just wonder as well, those little moments where I went was just imagining, the leader with their team. And sometimes it's all about, okay, team events, team retreats, team this, team that, or, going off and doing stuff together. Whereas those micro moments of appreciation, connection, conversation, simple, that over time is it. Because all those leaders that are maybe the charismatic or standing on the stage and wow, wasn't that wonderful? You then go back to the day-to-day and it's pretty.
That was a contact high you might get in the day-to-day. And I think you're right. I think those little moments, so what those little moments are of ordinariness are little moments of the dissolution of the self, where we feel a oneness and a connection with the other leaders in the room or our colleagues in the room. Yeah. And actually, it's not because some big personalities come and gone, wow, 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 wow. It's actually a moment of just feeling oneness, togetherness, dissolution of the self, that there's something greater than me in this team. The team is synergistic, and that can be in sport, it can be in work, where you feel like there's a wind behind us all. It makes us awesome together, right? And that's a dissolution of the self. That's what that is. But we think it comes from the self.
Yeah. And actually they are almost as a, collectively, there is an opportunity there to support each other, if you like, in this learning or re-seeing, that could be hugely powerful, in that you don't have to be alone. If you're alone, if you're kind of thinking you're alone and having to do something, this isn't about, this is almost like, if you had that opportunity to be as part of a team and having this sort of conversation, to unnumb and be aware, the magic can happen. And we've all perhaps been in those moments where we've worked with people and you can't even remember how you worked together, but it just flowed.
Yeah. And it's, do you know what? It's what so many leaders and organizations are looking for, that kind of, that mojo, where creativity, possibility, trust, inspiration is just as an abundance. And because that's what the secret sauce of organizations is, I guess, if you like, it's the magic. And that doesn't work well if we're all coming from a numb place, a comfortably numb place, slightly guarded. And that's why, in very corporate speak, people want psychological safety, because if people have psychological safety, they'll bring them full selves to work. Now, actually, it's the opposite of the full self you're really bringing. It's your it's your total openness to not be you. But so we know that stuff is very conducive for a high performance, high trusting, great organization. We're just talking about it from a slightly different angle here, I guess, aren't we?
Yeah, but it all comes back. I mean, this can be talked about in different ways. We're just starting from that ordinary, I suppose, like you were saying, the extraordinary, see the extraordinary in the ordinary. And actually what can happen in life is that there is this kind of, just going along comfortable, fine, but there's numbness there.
And what that does for possibility is fascinating, isn't it? So it seems to be when you denumb and just open up a bit, more serendipity and synchronicity turns up, right? And the possibility of what's available in the world just opens. Doesn't mean you have to go and seek it and I need it. It just like, whoop. So rather than having a comfortable life on a, Michael Neal used to say, on a postage stamp, right? Rather than having a lovely life, but on a postage stamp, you just kind of like, you're not trying to get anywhere, but ironically, by not trying to get anywhere, possibility opens up. Because I think it's also useful to say, and I thought I would have thought this 15 years ago, that, well, this not being numb thing sounds great, but I don't want to become some kind of slightly passive, lazy, or even take it or
Yes.
leave it, carefree person, because I want to do stuff in the world, because it's great to do stuff in the world. So it might sound like this wouldn't be useful for the world, but I would now say the opposite of that.
Absolutely. 100%. There's like more happens, more possibilities, more connections, more conversations that lead to more opportunity. Totally. Yeah.
Which could sound paradoxical.
It could.
Because you're almost getting your cake and eat it. So you're getting more joy and ease and wonderfulness and flow and less worrying and taking yourself seriously and less conditionality in life, and things are going better.
And people, maybe get, skeptical. But then the mind will, of course, it's going to hold on to, no, but I know I'm fine. And there'll be a lot of that invisible hamster wheel. No, it's all right. It's all right. I'm feeling good, solid.
Yeah. And it is funny, isn't it? Because people would say in this understanding, well, when people are ready, they'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never quite, well, I understand that at a level of what the English behind it. But what do you think that really means when people say that?
When people are ready, for me, that when people are ready, we're all ready, really. But it's just whether we're it's almost like that okay to take a step that is a bit different. To ask a different question. And I people come to it from different directions or different starting points, if you like, and that's however what we're pointing to is the same for everybody.
It is, but I think it's interesting actually in the company non-conversation. What's occurring to me now is that people sometimes things have to get really bad for people to start to look differently. So life's gone to crap, if you like. It really isn't working well. And they're at a low, if you want to call it that. And that's then that kind of rupture has allowed them to see something different about the nature of what we are. And they kind of phoenix out of that. Or people are going beautifully well and they've achieved everything. So they feel like, well, I've conquered the game of life. Now I'm curious to know about things beyond that. Yeah. Now, in the middle, where I think there's a lot of people sitting in the comfortably numb space, it's not going terribly enough for us to need to inquire differently. So we can keep going in our kind of echo chamber. But we don't feel secure enough to surrender and go a different way in the inquiry, because we're kind of like in that middle ground where we go, well, it's okay, but let's not, almost like, oh, I don't need to bother myself with that kind of conversation. Yeah, no, it's all right. And I don't want to rock the boat because my line's quite stable. So, I can't really see why. It's okay. So I think that there's a danger in that. Danger is a strong word. I don't mean that at all. I mean, there's a kind of complacency, should I say, in that middle ground. Now, what we're inviting people to do is go, you don't have to wait for it to go terrible, and you don't have to succeed at life massively. Just inquire from where you are. Right?
Yeah.
In this direction, and there's plenty of ways we can help you do that. But we're inquiring into fundamentally here about what we are and what the nature of thought, consciousness, reality is, and how we kind of self-identify with us being separate to the world, and then we have to strive and all this kind of stuff. Once you start to look in that direction, you can do that from any place. You don't have to wait. You just need to give yourself permission, I suppose, to go, this is a valid inquiry.
That's That's why I just think everyone is ready, but they don't necessarily know you're ready. But everyone could be ready now, just as in taking that, coming out of the starting blocks. You may go slowly. You may not sprint to the end.
You can't force the readiness. We know that.
No.
But what you can do is invite people, I think.
Yeah. And it's kind of that move from being passive and just being done to, if you like, or thinking that you're being done to, actually to, wow, wouldn't it? I mean, yeah, I suppose it's, because in a way we were that comfortably numb group,
Yeah.
but we ended up being open and exploring.
And I feel very lucky that happened. You know, I feel very lucky that I had people around me who were kind of going, oh, look this way, look this way. Now,
Yeah.
I did listen to them, I suppose, because I could have just gone, no, thanks. Right. So yes, that they're, you know, but I was suppose I was in a area of my life where I had people around me like that. And I know not everyone is. I was a coach, so I was a different modality of coaching I'm in now, but I was still around that, and you know, it was
So
people
I
around
suppose
me
the
that
message
evolved.
is the message. Yeah, you may think you're not ready because everything's okay, but now is the time. Why wait?
Yeah.
Why not just begin?
I mean, I think, Kate, you probably heard this, that the number one thing people say when they've experienced what we do with quality of mind is, oh, I wish I'd seen that before. Here I am, 40, 50 years old.
Yeah.
Or the other thing, that if only I'd known this when I was 20.
Yeah.
Or I was
Why
a
don't they
teenager.
teach this in schools?
Yeah, well, I mean, we must get that all the time. It's like almost boringly repetitive how often we get that from people going, and we're like, I know. So,
yeah.
Listeners, here's an invitation. If you're in the congregation or the choir already, then great. But if you're not, but you're still listening, you're ready. I mean, I'm ready is the wrong word, isn't it? Because this is available. This is so accessible and democratic. And the way we try and do equality of mind is we defunk it from esoteric spiritual language. We don't think you have to have 20 years of practice to get here. We point very, very simply, and there's other podcasts that do this actually on Lifetime, to inquire in a direct inquiry way without reference to belief system or construct to the nature of what we are, which is a really simple, not always easy, but simple thing, unconventional, but powerful thing. And then that starts the curiosity to go, so what does that mean for the rest of my psychology then? So that's the next bit, you know. So you have the aha of the inquiry, then we help you clean up your psychology, right? And you start to see it. But that is available for anyone. It's totally universal.
What an offer.
What an offer.
What an offer.
And I suppose we're saying the comfortable numb indicators are just a little clue that you might want to listen to.
Yeah, I think those are great. If I'd had
so let's try and sum those up, shall we? So let's try and do the 1 minute version, right? Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to do the 1 minute version. What would you say are the telltales?
If you're taking yourself personally, if you're seeing as going on holiday as the kind of get out clause, or I can't wait, and that's the place I'm going to feel okay. If you're just feeling fine and things are chugging along, that's actually also a bit of a signal, or a good indicator. What other ones were there? I've gone.
I think, when did you last feel joy for no reason at all, if you want to call it that, right? So when did you just have a little bit of awesomeness or joy, not because you ran up Mount Everest, right, but just because you just did? How much are you in your head, if that's a phrase people can relate to, like overthinking? That kind of seeking comfort in thought.
We're trying to work things out, be in control.
Trying to work things out.
Are you in control? Are you thinking you're in control? I think we've got quite we probably could go on, but that's probably a good.
And I suppose a very general one, but this might be hard to see because until you've seen it the other way, is just, how does life feel? Does it feel light, airy, rich, full of awe and ease and flow? Or does it feel a bit like grudgy, grindy, heavy, need to put psychological effort in? And then how quickly does your mind justify why it feels the latter? So anything else we can do to wrap this up and put a bow on it?
I think finishing with the indicators is great, because those are the ones we miss. And if we can actually begin to just use those everyday things we just take for granted and just use stop and say, is that going on for me? I think it's just keep it simple. That's why I would.
And I think that the so what is, we're saying there's loads more juice to life than we notice. And that's not by having a different life and changing everything. It's just by more juice in the ordinary. And if people are curious to go, okay, I've got you. I've now thingified myself as comfortably numb. What do I do? Well, we would suggest that you get curious about what we point to in Quality of Mind. That's not what we've done really in this podcast, but there's loads of other podcasts you can look at on that, or reach out to Kate or myself and have a conversation. And quite quickly, we'll be able to point you in the direction that we're talking about. So go for it, reach out, say hi to us, and see what happens.
Fantastic. Great to be in this conversation.
Brilliant. Well, I want to say, Kate, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed our explore of Comfortably Numb. And so thank you for coming.
Pleasure. Good
and listeners, as usual, have fun till next time and stay curious.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to know more, check out our website at qualityofmind.biz. And also feel free to reach out and leave us a review or a comment. Until next time, have fun being curious.